Rain pours mercilessly as sheriff's deputies carry furniture to the curb. A woman in scrubs clutches paperwork in trembling hands, her face a mask of desperation. "Please, just one more week. I get paid on Friday." The officer avoids eye contact. "Ma'am, we have our orders." In a car parked across the street, the woman breaks down, sobbing uncontrollably until her teenage daughter awkwardly touches her shoulder. She quickly wipes her tears, meeting her children's frightened eyes in the rearview mirror. "This isn't over. We will have a home again." Before we continue the story, let us know where you're watching from. Sarah Connors had always been the one people counted on. A dedicated nurse at Memorial Hospital, she'd spent 12 years healing others while raising her two children, 14-year-old Mia and 9-year-old Tyler, largely on her own. When her ex-husband stopped paying child support 8 months ago, Sarah picked up extra shifts. When the hospital cut hours during budget restructuring, she found weekend work at a nursing home. When Tyler needed braces, she sold her grandmother's silver to cover the deposit. But the mortgage on their modest 3-bedroom home in Oak Ridge Estates couldn't wait. Not after 3 missed payments. Not with Meridian Bank demanding immediate payment. Not with foreclosure proceedings already in motion. Sarah had done everything right, worked endless hours, cut every possible expense, even applied for assistance programs. But in a courtroom on a Tuesday morning in April, none of that mattered. The law was clear, the judge explained. The bank had the right to reclaim their property. And just like that, Sarah Connors, the woman who had saved countless lives in the ER, couldn't save the one thing her children needed most, their home. The morning of Sarah Connors' court hearing began like most others, in exhausted darkness. Her alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. after her late shift at Memorial. 3 hours of fitful sleep would have to be enough. She showered quickly, the water never quite reaching hot, and put on the navy pantsuit she'd bought secondhand for occasions exactly like this one. In the kitchen, she prepared lunches, signed permission slips, and set out cereal for when the kids woke up. A reminder note on the fridge: "Mom at court, Grandma picks up after school." She paused at Tyler's bedroom door, watching him sleep peacefully, blissfully unaware of what today might mean for their family. The courthouse was an imposing limestone building, its steps already crowded at 8:30 a.m. Inside, Sarah clutched a folder containing everything she thought might help: pay stubs, a letter from her supervisor promising more hours, a payment plan she'd worked out showing how she could catch up if given just 2 more months. Docket number 47,823, Meridian Bank versus Connors, the clerk announced. Sarah approached the plaintiff's table alone. She couldn't afford an attorney, not after exhausting her savings on the mortgage payments she had managed to make. Across the aisle sat Victor Harmon, Meridian Bank's representative. His tailored suit and leather portfolio exuded confidence. He barely glanced at Sarah. "Your Honor," Sarah began, her voice steadier than she felt, "I'm not disputing that I've fallen behind. I'm a nurse and a single mother of 2. My ex-husband stopped paying child support, and I've been working double shifts to catch up." She slid forward her folder of documents. "I have a payment plan here showing how I can become current within 60 days. The hospital is giving me additional hours and—" "Ms. Connors," Judge Williams interrupted, not unkindly, "I understand your situation is difficult, but the law is quite specific regarding mortgage contracts. Has the bank offered you any modification options?" "They said I don't qualify because my income is too inconsistent." Victor Harmon finally spoke, his voice measured and professional. "Your Honor, Meridian Bank has followed all required protocols. Ms. Connors was given multiple notices and opportunities to resolve this matter. The property is now 3 months delinquent, meeting state requirements for foreclosure proceedings." The judge reviewed the documents, his expression giving away nothing. "I see here you've already been granted one extension, Ms. Connors." "Yes, Your Honor. I used my tax refund to catch up then, but my son needed emergency dental work the following month, and then, I understand." The judge sighed, removing his glasses. "Unfortunately, the court must rule in accordance with state statutes. The plaintiff has met the legal burden for foreclosure. The property will revert to Meridian Bank effective immediately, with standard 30-day vacancy requirements." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. 30 days. 30 days to find a new home with no savings, poor credit, and 2 children depending on her. "Your Honor, please." Sarah's voice cracked. "My children are in school. My son has special needs services there. If we move—" "I'm sorry, Ms. Connors. My ruling stands." As Sarah gathered her useless paperwork, Victor Harmon brushed past her. "It's just business," he murmured. "Nothing personal." The next 4 weeks passed in a blur of frantic searching. Every affordable apartment wanted first and last month's rent plus deposit, money Sarah simply didn't have. Extended stay motels were beyond her budget. Friends offered couches for a few nights, but not indefinitely, not for 3 people. Sarah sold furniture, electronics, anything that wouldn't fit in their car or the small storage unit she rented with borrowed money from her mother. Each item carried memories: the dining table where Tyler had completed his first-grade projects, the bookshelf Mia had helped paint when they moved in 5 years ago. The children reacted differently to the crisis. Mia became withdrawn, spending more time on her phone, refusing to pack until the last possible moment. Tyler asked the same questions repeatedly, unable to process why they couldn't stay in the only home he clearly remembered. "But why can't we pay them later, Mom? You always say we pay people what we owe them." How could she explain predatory lending practices to a 9-year-old? How could she tell him that sometimes the system was designed to fail people like them? On their last night in the house, Sarah walked through each empty room. Patches of brighter paint marked where pictures had hung. Growth measurements on the kitchen doorframe documented years of childhood. She ran her fingers along the walls, remembering the weekend they had painted together. Pizza boxes scattered across newspaper-covered floors. Morning arrived with dark clouds gathering. Sarah had hoped to be gone before any officials arrived, but loading their remaining possessions took longer than expected. Tyler couldn't find his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Mia argued about leaving her desk behind. Then came the knock. 2 sheriff's deputies, apologetic but firm. A bank representative, not Victor Harmon, but someone equally detached, with paperwork requiring signatures. "We need to speed this up," one deputy said, glancing at the darkening sky. "Storm's coming in." The first raindrops fell as they carried out the last boxes. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Mrs. Abernathy from next door hurried over with garbage bags to cover what wouldn't fit in the car. Mr. Patel from across the street helped secure Tyler's bicycle to the roof rack. But most just watched, perhaps relieved it wasn't them this time, perhaps wondering if they might be next. The heavens opened fully as they pulled away from the curb. Tyler pressed his face against the rear window, watching their home disappear behind a curtain of rain. Mia stared stonily at her phone, though Sarah noticed it wasn't even turned on. They made it 3 blocks before Sarah had to pull over, her vision blurred by tears. She gripped the steering wheel as sobs racked her body, all the strength she'd maintained for weeks finally collapsing. It was Mia who reached out, her hand awkward but present on her mother's shoulder. The simple gesture both broke and mended something in Sarah. She straightened, wiped her eyes, and looked at her children in the rearview mirror. "This isn't over," she promised, her voice finding new resolve. "We will have a home again." The Sunset Motel sat on the edge of Highway 16, its neon sign missing several letters. At $59 per night, it was the cheapest option Sarah could find that wasn't hourly. The single room with 2 double beds would be their home for now. Sarah registered under her maiden name, irrationally afraid the bank might somehow track them. The clerk barely looked up from his television program as he handed over a key attached to a plastic fob. Room 118 smelled of industrial cleaner, barely masking years of cigarette smoke. The carpet was worn to threads in high-traffic areas. The bathroom featured rust stains and missing tiles. But it had a roof, running water, and enough electricity to power the ancient mini-fridge and microwave. "It's just temporary," Sarah assured as she helped the children settle in, like camping. That night, as her children finally slept, Sarah sat on the edge of the bathtub with her laptop, searching job boards for additional work. The hospital was a 2-hour bus ride from the motel, making her shifts even more exhausting. She applied for overnight stocking positions at nearby stores, weekend receptionist work, anything that might help rebuild their savings. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Did you apply for that housing assistance program?" Sarah stared at the message. She had 3 different ones. All had waiting lists measured in years, not months. One had actually laughed when she called to check her status. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her banking app and calculated how long they could stay at the motel before she'd have to choose between shelter and food. The answer made her stomach clench. 3 weeks. 3 weeks before impossible choices. Sarah closed the bathroom door and turned on the shower to mask the sound as she finally allowed herself to cry again. The next morning, she woke the children before dawn. "We need to leave early to get you to school on time," she explained, helping Tyler find clean socks in their hastily packed bags. "Do we have to go today?" Mia asked. "Everyone will know. Education doesn't stop for hard times," Sarah replied, the phrase her own mother had repeated through difficult periods. "And you don't need to tell anyone where we're staying. It's private." The bus ride to their school district took nearly an hour. Sarah watched the neighborhoods change through the window, from the commercial strips near the motel to increasingly residential areas, finally reaching the middle-class community they'd left behind. Oak Ridge Elementary and West Side Middle School were just 3 blocks apart, allowing Sarah to walk both children to their buildings. "I'll pick you up right here at 3:30, she told them, straightening Tyler's collar. "Wait together, okay?" Mia rolled her eyes. "I'm 14, Mom. I don't need a babysitter. I know you're responsible. That's why I'm counting on you." Sarah squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "Just a few hours, then we'll figure out dinner together." As they walked away, Tyler's dinosaur backpack bouncing with each step, Mia's shoulders hunched defensively. Sarah felt a physical ache in her chest. They deserved so much better than what she could provide right now. Her own hospital shift started at noon, leaving her 3 hours to visit the housing authority office. The waiting room was already crowded when she arrived, desperate faces above clipboard questionnaires. Sarah recognized the look from her own mirror. When her number was finally called, the caseworker seemed genuinely sympathetic but ultimately helpless. Emergency housing assistance requires an actual eviction notice, not a foreclosure, she explained. Different funding streams, different requirements. But we were evicted, Sarah insisted. There were sheriff's deputies. That's a bank repossession. Technically different. The caseworker lowered her voice. The system isn't designed for people in your situation. Most assistance programs assume foreclosures happen to homeowners with equity or other resources. Sarah leaned forward. What about my children? There must be something. Family shelters have a 6-week waiting list right now. The caseworker slid across a pamphlet. This has information about food banks and community meals. Some churches offer temporary assistance with hotel vouchers. Sarah stared at the glossy trifold. The help it offered was for people in genuine crisis, not a nurse with a steady paycheck who should, theoretically, be able to support her family. The gap between should and could had never felt so vast. Her shift at Memorial Hospital passed in the exhausted routine she'd perfected over years. Temperature checks, medication distribution, chart updates, comforting words to frighten patients. Her body performed these tasks automatically while her mind raced with calculations and contingency plans. During her lunch break, she called the school to check on Tyler. The counselor reported he seemed quiet but participated in class. Small victories. As her shift ended, Sarah's supervisor called her into the office. "Connor, we need to discuss your schedule." Barbara had been Sarah's mentor for years, her directness always tempered with fairness. "You requested more hours, but you look like you're running on fumes." "I'm fine," Sarah insisted. "Just adjusting to a new living situation." Barbara's expression softened. "If you need to talk, what I need is more work," Sarah interrupted, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry, it's been a difficult week, but I can handle additional shifts, truly." The conversation ended with a compromise. 3 extra shifts over the next 2 weeks, with Barbara's promise to reevaluate after that. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The bus ride back to the children's schools took longer than expected due to traffic. Sarah found them waiting on the steps, Tyler clutching his backpack to his chest, Mia pacing irritably. "Sorry I'm late," Sarah called, hurrying toward them. The bus was. "Save it," Mia cut her off. "Tyler had a meltdown because you weren't here on time." Everyone saw. Sarah knelt before her son, whose face showed traces of dried tears. "I'm here now, buddy. I promise I won't be late again." "Trevor says we're homeless," Tyler whispered. "Are we homeless, Mom?" The question pierced Sarah's heart. "No, honey. We have a place to stay. It's just different right now." As they walked to the bus stop, Sarah noticed Tyler wincing slightly. "Does something hurt?" He shook his head quickly. Too quickly. Sarah gently turned him to face her. "Tyler Robert Connors, what's wrong?" Reluctantly, he lifted his shirt to reveal a bruise forming on his side. "Who did this?" Sarah demanded, panic and fury rising simultaneously. "Trevor and his friends," Mia answered when Tyler wouldn't. "They were teasing him about living in a car, and when he said we didn't, they pushed him against the fence." Sarah embraced her son, mind racing between protective rage and practical necessities. She couldn't march into the principal's office. Not now, not when they were technically outside the school district, not when drawing attention might create new problems. "We'll talk to your teacher tomorrow," she promised. "And Mia's right. We're not homeless. We have each other, and that's what makes a home." The words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. That night, after microwave macaroni and cheese eaten from paper bowls, after Tyler finally fell asleep watching cartoons on Sarah's phone, Mia cornered her mother in the cramped bathroom. "Stop lying to him," she hissed. "Stop pretending everything's fine." "I'm not pretending," Sarah whispered back. "I'm trying to protect you both while I figure this out." "Figure what out?" "How we live in this gross motel forever. How I can't invite friends over or tell anyone where we are. How Tyler gets beaten up because we don't have a real house." Each question landed like a physical blow. Sarah reached for her daughter, but Mia stepped back. "You promised we'd never end up like this," Mia continued, tears finally breaking through her anger. "You promised after Dad left that we'd be okay." "And we will be," Sarah insisted, pulling Mia into an embrace despite her resistance. "This is temporary, a setback, not an ending." Eventually, Mia's rigid posture softened as she cried against her mother's shoulder. When she finally pulled away, her expression had changed from fury to something worse, resignation. "Whatever, Mom. Just don't make promises you can't keep anymore." Days stretched into weeks at the Sunset Motel. Sarah established new routines, Early mornings at the laundromat before school, dinner from the grocery store deli counter or dollar menu, homework spread across beds because there was no table. She stretched their budget by bargaining with the motel manager for a weekly rate, reducing their cost to $350, still exorbitant for what they received, but better than before. She canceled their cell phone plan, keeping only her phone active for emergencies and job contacts. Tyler's teacher had addressed the bullying situation, but the damage was done. He became more withdrawn, jumping at sudden noises, having nightmares that woke all three of them in their shared space. Their conversation after the incident haunted Sarah. "Why can't we go home, Mom? I'll be good. This isn't about you being good or bad, sweetheart. The bank took our house because of grown-up money problems. Can't you fight the bank? You always tell me to stand up to bullies." Sarah had no answer that wouldn't further complicate his understanding of justice. 3 weeks into their stay, Sarah was working a 12-hour weekend shift when a familiar name appeared on her patient roster: Harmon, Elizabeth. The coincidence seemed impossible, yet the date of birth and insurance information confirmed this was indeed related to Victor Harmon from Meridian Bank. When Sarah entered examination room 3, she found a well-dressed woman in her early 40s with a minor laceration on her forehead. "Mrs. Harmon, I'm Sarah, your nurse today. Says here you were in a minor accident?" "Fender bender," Elizabeth Harmon explained, touching her injury gingerly. "Airbag deployed. The doctor already said I don't have a concussion, but they want to clean and dress this cut." Sarah worked with professional efficiency, cleaning the wound while making appropriate small talk. Nothing in her demeanor betrayed the hurricane of emotions beneath her calm exterior. "You have wonderful hands," Elizabeth commented. "Very gentle. Thank you. I've been a nurse for 12 years. It shows. My husband always says you can tell true professionals by how they handle pressure." Elizabeth smiled. "He works in banking, high stress, constant deadlines." Sarah carefully applied butterfly closures to the laceration. "Banking must be interesting work. Victor finds it fulfilling. He's with Meridian, just saved our whole neighborhood, actually. There was this development company trying to convert it to low-income housing. Can you imagine? Our property values would have plummeted." Sarah's hands faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Sounds like he's quite the community hero. He says it's just business, but I know he cares deeply about preserving neighborhood character." After Mrs. Harmon was discharged, Sarah excused herself to the staff bathroom. Once inside, she locked the door and pressed her forehead against the cool tile wall, struggling to control her breathing. The connection was undeniable. Victor Harmon wasn't just a bank representative following procedure. He was actively working to reshape neighborhoods, her neighborhood, for profit. A wave of fury washed over her. Sarah slammed her fist against the wall, pain shooting through her knuckles. The physical sensation provided momentary relief from the emotional tornado. When she examined her hand, the skin was split across 2 knuckles. Nothing broken, but she'd need to bandage it before returning to work. As she wrapped gauze around her hand, a new emotion emerged alongside the anger: determination. That evening, Sarah found herself in the community room of First Presbyterian Church, attending a support group for displaced homeowners. She hadn't planned to go, had even scoffed at the flyer posted at the housing assistance office. What good would talking do? They needed action, not comfort. But Tyler was spending the night at her mother's apartment, and Mia was at a rare sleepover with a friend who hadn't yet abandoned her. The evening stretched emptily ahead, and Sarah couldn't face the motel room alone. The meeting was already underway when she slipped into a metal folding chair at the back of the room. A balding man in his 50s was speaking, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone accustomed to public speaking. "The banks count on our shame," he was saying. "They count on us believing we failed, rather than recognizing that the system is designed for us to fail." Sarah studied him as he continued. His clothes were clean but worn, his gestures passionate without being theatrical. He spoke like someone who understood both the legal complexities and the human cost of housing insecurity. After the formal meeting ended, Sarah approached him as he gathered papers from a small table. "You seem to know a lot about foreclosure law," she observed. He looked up, offering a tired smile. "Raymond Beck, former real estate attorney." "Former? Lost my license fighting the wrong battles." He extended his hand. "And you are?" "Sarah Connors, nurse, recently foreclosed upon by Meridian Bank." Raymond's expression sharpened. "Meridian, you say? Whereabouts?" "Oak Ridge Estates." He nodded slowly. "You're the 4th person from that neighborhood I've met this month. Interesting pattern." Sarah described her situation briefly: the missed payments, the court hearing, the eviction, and finally, her encounter with Elizabeth Harmon. "Her husband works for the bank that took your house, and he's also involved with development?" Raymond clarified, jotting notes on a legal pad. "That's potentially significant." "Why?" "It's not illegal to be married to a developer." "No, but there are strict regulations about how banks can dispose of foreclosed properties, especially when there might be conflicts of interest." Raymond handed her his card. I can't practice law anymore, but I can help you understand what documents to request and how to interpret them. Sarah stared at the card, then handed it back. I appreciate the offer, but I need to focus on keeping my job and finding stable housing for my kids. I don't have time for a crusade. With respect, Ms. Connors, understanding what happened might be directly connected to finding new housing. If there are improprieties in how these foreclosures are being handled, you could have legal recourse. Legal recourse takes time and money. I have neither. Raymond nodded. I understand, but if you change your mind, my number's on the board over there. I volunteer here Tuesday evenings. As Sarah turned to leave, he added, the shame isn't yours to carry, Sarah. Remember that. That night, alone in the motel room, Sarah couldn't sleep. Raymond's words echoed in her mind as she scrolled through rental listings she couldn't afford. The shame isn't yours to carry. But if not hers, whose? The bank was just following the contract she had signed. Her ex-husband had abandoned his responsibilities. True, but she was the one who had fallen behind on payments. Almost unconsciously, she found herself typing Meridian Bank Foreclosures Oak Ridge into her phone's search engine. The results included several news articles about neighborhood revitalization and property value increases. One headline caught her attention. Harmon Development Group announces luxury community plans for Oak Ridge. The article, dated just 2 weeks after her eviction, detailed plans for the Estates at Oak Ridge, a gated community featuring homes starting at $750,000, with construction beginning once the neighborhood transition is complete. Sarah stared at her phone in disbelief. The pieces were starting to align in a pattern too neat for coincidence. The next morning, she called Raymond Beck. Raymond Beck's office was actually the back room of a print shop owned by his brother-in-law. Cardboard boxes served as impromptu filing cabinets, and the desk appeared to be an old door resting on sawhorses. Despite these makeshift accommodations, the walls displayed framed law degrees from prestigious universities. Sorry about the setup, Raymond said, clearing stacks of paper from a folding chair. After my disbarment, conventional office space became financially prohibitive. What happened? Sarah asked, sitting carefully. If you don't mind me asking, Raymond sighed, rubbing his beard. I represented several homeowners against United Mortgage during the 2008 crisis. We were winning, proving they had violated notification requirements. Then suddenly, my clients started withdrawing their cases one by one. He shuffled papers on his makeshift desk. I kept pushing, even when it was clear someone had gotten to my clients. The bank filed ethics complaints, claiming I was pursuing frivolous litigation. The Bar Association agreed. That's horrible. That's business. Raymond's smile held no humor. Now, tell me more about your situation with Meridian and this Harmon Development connection. Sarah described everything, the foreclosure process, her encounter with Mrs. Harmon, and the news article about the luxury development. I need to know if you're serious about pursuing this, Raymond said after listening. Not just for yourself, but potentially for others in your neighborhood. It will take time, persistence, and emotional energy you might not feel you have right now. Sarah thought of Tyler's bruises, Mia's resignation, the growth marks on the kitchen door frame they'd never see again. I don't have much left to lose, she replied. And I need my children to see that sometimes you have to fight, even when it seems impossible. Raymond nodded. First step, we need to examine your foreclosure documents and loan history. Then we'll request public records about property transfers in your neighborhood. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah spent every free moment, precious little with her work schedule, reviewing documents with Raymond. They spread papers across the print shop's work table after hours, creating timelines and connection maps. What emerged was disturbing. Sarah's mortgage had been sold multiple times between financial institutions, making it almost impossible to track who actually owned her loan when foreclosure proceedings began. Her paperwork contained discrepancies in dates and amounts that hadn't been questioned during the expedited court hearing. This is called robo-signing, Raymond explained, pointing to nearly identical signatures on different documents. During the foreclosure crisis, banks employed people to sign thousands of documents daily without proper review. It's illegal, but proving it requires significant resources. Through public records requests, they discovered that Meridian Bank had acquired dozens of mortgages in Oak Ridge Estates over the past year, all in specific sections of the neighborhood. They're cherry-picking, Raymond muttered, circling properties on a neighborhood map, creating a contiguous block of foreclosures in the most desirable section. The pattern became clearer when they overlaid property transfers from Meridian Bank to Harmon Development Group. Properties were changing hands remarkably quickly after foreclosure, sometimes within days rather than the usual months. This suggests prior arrangement, Raymond said. Normally, banks list foreclosed properties on the open market or at auction. This looks like a predetermined transfer strategy. Sarah noticed another pattern. All these foreclosures, They're all single-parent households, elderly residents, or families with financial hardships documented in public records like bankruptcy filings. Targeting vulnerable homeowners, Raymond nodded grimly. Easier to pressure, less likely to have resources to fight back. Sarah felt sick. So this wasn't just bad luck or my own failure. They were waiting for people like me to stumble. Precisely. Their next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sarah ran into her former neighbor, Harold Jenkins, at the grocery store. Unlike Sarah, Harold still lived in his Oak Ridge home. Bank offered me a special refinancing program, he explained when Sarah asked how he'd managed. Lower interest, extended term. Said I was a valued community member. Did everyone get this offer? Sarah asked. Harold shifted uncomfortably. Don't think so. Mr. Patel asked me about it, said he was denied when he applied. Sarah invited Harold to meet with Raymond, who carefully documented the terms of this special program. They compared Harold's financial situation with Sarah's. His income was lower, his payment history worse. The only significant differences: Harold was an older white man who lived alone, while Sarah was a younger woman with children. Discrimination, Raymond stated flatly. They're choosing who stays and who goes based on demographic profiles that suit their development vision. The final piece clicked into place when they examined Sarah's foreclosure paperwork more carefully. The notary stamps on several critical documents differed from state requirements, and one signature appeared to be significantly different from Sarah's own. This isn't my signature, Sarah realized, comparing it to her driver's license. I never signed this document. Raymond's expression was simultaneously troubled and triumphant. Forgery. Now we have something concrete. That evening, Sarah returned to the motel emotionally drained but internally fired up. Weeks of investigation had confirmed what she'd initially suspected. Her family hadn't simply fallen victim to unfortunate circumstances. They had been targeted as part of a systematic effort to reshape her neighborhood. The knowledge was both devastating and empowering. She hadn't failed her children through personal shortcomings. A predatory system had identified her vulnerability and exploited it for profit. As she opened the motel room door, the contrast between this realization and her current reality hit hard. Tyler was curled on one bed with his dinosaur, watching cartoons on her mother's borrowed tablet. Mia sat cross-legged on the other bed, attempting to complete homework assignments in the inadequate light. "Mom?" Tyler launched himself at her. "We waited forever." Sarah checked her watch, alarmed to find it was nearly 8 p.m. She'd lost track of time at Raymond's office. "I'm so sorry, buddy." Work ran long. The half-truth tasted bitter. Mia didn't look up from her textbook. "Grandma brought dinner. Yours is in the fridge." "Thank you for taking care of things," Sarah said, setting down her bag. "How was school today?" Tyler launched into a detailed account of recess activities while Sarah heated her meal in the microwave. Mia remained conspicuously silent. After Tyler was asleep, Sarah sat beside her daughter. "I know I've been distracted lately," she began. "Distracted?" Mia finally looked up, her expression unnervingly adult. "You're never here anymore. When you are, you're on the phone or looking at papers. It's like we lost our house, and now we're losing you too." The accusation stung because it contained truth. Sarah had been so focused on understanding what had happened, she'd neglected to fully address what was happening now, her children continuing to suffer in this limbo. "You're right," Sarah admitted. "I've been trying to figure out why we lost our home, and I think I've found some answers. But that doesn't excuse neglecting you and Tyler." "What difference does why make?" Mia asked. "We still don't have a home. It makes a difference because what happened to us wasn't fair or legal, and we might be able to do something about it, not just for us, but for other families too." Sarah explained in simplified terms what she and Raymond had discovered. As she spoke, she noticed Mia's expression shifting from resentment to interest. "So they basically stole our house? That's illegal, right?" "It's complicated, but yes, parts of what they did violated the law." "Then we should totally fight them," Mia declared with teenage certainty. "Make them pay." Sarah smiled at her daughter's sudden enthusiasm. "It's not that simple. Legal battles take time and resources." "So what? You always tell us to stand up to bullies." Mia pulled out her school notebook and flipped to a blank page. "I've been researching foreclosures for my social studies project. Did you know banks foreclosed on thousands of homes with paperwork errors during the housing crisis?" Sarah stared at her daughter's notes, detailed, organized research that mirrored her own investigations with Raymond. All this time, while Sarah thought Mia was withdrawing, she'd been trying to understand their situation in her own way. That night, Sarah nearly abandoned the entire investigation. After Mia fell asleep, she drafted an email to Raymond explaining that she needed to focus exclusively on her family's immediate needs. Her finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. Then she noticed Mia's notebook on the nightstand, open to a page titled, "How Banks Take Homes Unfairly." Below it, in Mia's careful handwriting, "Mom will fix this. She always does." Sarah deleted the draft, Her children needed stability, yes, but they also needed to see that justice was worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The next day, Sarah called Raymond with a new determination. "I'm still in, but I need to balance this fight with being present for my kids. Can we adjust our schedule?" Raymond agreed immediately. "Family comes first, always. We'll work around your schedule." Their investigation entered a new phase. With Sarah's limited availability, Raymond took on more of the document review while Sarah focused on connecting with other affected homeowners. Through property records and Raymond's support group contacts, Sarah identified 27 families from Oak Ridge Estates who had lost their homes to Meridian Bank in the past year. She began calling them one by one, carefully explaining what they'd discovered and asking about their experiences. Patterns emerged quickly. Nearly all reported similar experiences. Minor payment delays met with immediate foreclosure proceedings rather than modification offers. Court hearings scheduled at inconvenient times. Paperwork discrepancies they hadn't noticed until it was too late. "We need to bring these families together," Raymond suggested. "There's power in numbers, especially when seeking media attention." Sarah arranged a meeting at First Presbyterian's community room for the following Sunday afternoon. She created simple flyers, which Mia helped distribute to former neighbors they could locate. The day of the meeting arrived with Sarah nervous but prepared. She'd created a basic presentation outlining their findings, with Raymond available to answer legal questions. Tyler insisted on attending, proud to help set up chairs with his grandmother, who had become an enthusiastic supporter of Sarah's efforts. As the meeting time approached, Sarah watched anxiously as people trickled in. 5 families, 8, 12. By the scheduled start time, 23 of the 27 families were represented, filling the community room to capacity. Sarah stood to begin her presentation, suddenly overwhelmed by the responsibility. These people had lost their homes, just like her. They were struggling with similar hardships. What if this effort led nowhere? What if she was giving them false hope? As she hesitated, Tyler began coughing in the back row, the persistent cough he'd developed since moving to the mold-infested motel. The sound triggered Sarah's deepest fear, that her pursuit of justice was coming at the cost of her son's health. Her carefully prepared opening dissolved in her mind. I'm not sure." From the second row, a woman stood up, Maria Rodriguez, a single mother of 3 whose home had been one of the first foreclosed upon. "Let me say something," Maria began. 6 months ago, I thought losing my home was my fault. I believed I had failed my children. I carried that shame every day." She moved to stand beside Sarah. "Then Ms. Connors called me, asked questions no one had asked before. She showed me documents proving the bank had broken rules, violated my rights. For the first time, I felt angry instead of ashamed." Maria turned to address the room. "We are not here because we failed. We are here because a system failed us, deliberately. And now, together, we can do something about it." The room erupted in applause. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude as Maria squeezed her hand in solidarity. She wasn't alone in this fight. None of them were. With renewed confidence, Sarah began her presentation. She explained the pattern of targeted foreclosures, the connection to Harmon Development Group, and the evidence of paperwork irregularities they'd discovered. "We're calling ourselves the Homeowners Justice Alliance," Sarah concluded. "Together, we can seek accountability from Meridian Bank and potentially reclaim our homes or receive appropriate compensation." The discussion that followed was passionate and productive. Families shared additional evidence of misconduct. Some brought foreclosure documents showing the same irregularities Raymond had identified in Sarah's paperwork. Others described interactions with bank representatives who had discouraged loan modifications or steered them away from assistance programs. By meeting's end, all 23 families had officially joined the alliance, contributing what they could to a community fund for legal expenses. It wasn't much. Most were still struggling with basic necessities, but it represented a powerful commitment. As people filed out, exchanging contact information and planning further actions, Raymond approached Sarah. "That was impressive," he said. "You're a natural organizer." "I just connected people who needed each other," Sarah replied, watching Tyler help stack chairs. "What's our next step?" "Media attention. We need to make this public." Through a nurse colleague, Sarah was introduced to Michael Henderson, a reporter for the local newspaper who specialized in housing issues. Initially skeptical, Henderson agreed to meet Sarah and Raymond at the print shop to review their evidence. "Interesting," he remarked, examining their documentation, "but not entirely surprising. Banks have been playing fast and loose with foreclosure procedures for years." "This is different," Sarah insisted. "It's not just procedural shortcuts. It's a coordinated strategy to target specific homeowners for the benefit of a development company with direct ties to the bank." Henderson remained non-committal, but agreed to review the materials more thoroughly. A week later, his article appeared in the Sunday edition. "Homeowners allege systematic foreclosure abuse in Oak Ridge." The piece was smaller than they'd hoped, page 3 rather than front page, but it meticulously outlined the alliance's key allegations and included quotes from several affected families. Most importantly, it named both Meridian Bank and Harmon Development Group. "It's a start," Raymond said when they met to discuss the article. "Now we need legal muscle." The alliance had raised enough money to consult with an attorney, but not nearly enough for sustained representation. Raymond suggested approaching Diana Miller, a successful class action attorney known for taking on corporate interests. "She's selective about her cases," he warned, "and we'll need more than allegations to interest her." Sarah and Raymond prepared exhaustively for their meeting with Diana Miller. They organized their evidence into clear categories, created timelines showing the relationship between foreclosures and property transfers, and compiled testimonials from alliance members. Diana's office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, a stark contrast to Raymond's print shop headquarters. Her reception area featured award plaques and newspaper clippings, highlighting major victories against pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers. Sarah felt immediately outclassed in her thrift store blazer and scuffed pumps, but reminded herself that appearances didn't diminish the truth of their case. Diana Miller herself projected confidence and efficiency. In her mid-50s with precisely styled silver hair, she reviewed their materials with minimal commentary, occasionally asking pointed questions about documentation sources and verification methods. After an hour, she closed the final folder and leaned back in her chair. "You've done impressive investigative work," she acknowledged, "particularly considering your resources, but I need to be direct. Cases against financial institutions are extraordinarily difficult. We understand the challenges," Sarah responded, "but 27 families have lost their homes through potentially fraudulent practices. More are at risk. Doesn't that merit action?" "Merit isn't the issue. Wineability is." Diana tapped the folders. "You have concerning patterns and some documentation discrepancies, but you're missing the smoking gun that connects these foreclosures directly to a profit scheme," Raymond intervened. "We believe further discovery would reveal those connections. The timeline between foreclosures and property transfers to Harmon Development alone suggests isn't enough in court," Diana sighed. "I'm sorry, but I don't see a viable case here that justifies the resources required. The bank has millions to fight this. You have community goodwill and limited documentation." Sarah felt the familiar burn of rejection, but refused to accept it this time. "Miller, before you decide, I'd like you to meet some of the families affected." Diana checked her watch. "I have another appointment in 15 minutes. Not today. This Sunday. The Alliance meets weekly at First Presbyterian." Sarah stood, gathering their materials. "See the people behind these documents, then decide if their case deserves representation." To Sarah's surprise, Diana Miller did attend the Sunday meeting. She sat quietly in the back, observing as families shared updates and new members introduced themselves. The Alliance had grown to 35 families now, with more coming forward after the newspaper article. Diana didn't commit to anything that day, but 2 days later, her office called. She would represent the Homeowners Justice Alliance on a contingency basis, with minimal upfront costs. "What changed her mind?" Sarah asked Raymond when he delivered the news. "You did," he replied simply. "You and all those families fighting together. Diana has her pick of cases. She chooses the ones with clients she believes in. With Diana's legal expertise now supporting them, the Alliance's efforts accelerated. Formal document requests were filed. Depositions were scheduled. The local newspaper ran a follow-up article highlighting the class action preparation. Meridian Bank, now forced to acknowledge the situation publicly, issued a statement. "Meridian Bank adheres to all applicable laws and regulations regarding mortgage servicing and foreclosure proceedings. We deny any allegations of impropriety and will vigorously defend our reputation and practices." Behind the scenes, however, the bank was clearly concerned. Sarah noticed unmarked cars occasionally parked near the motel. Alliance members reported receiving calls from bank representatives, suddenly offering loan modifications or settlement discussions. Then came the direct approach. Sarah returned to the motel one evening to find Victor Harmon himself waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a luxury sedan. "Miss Connors," he greeted her, as though they were colleagues. "I was hoping we might talk." Sarah's heart raced, but she maintained her composure. "I believe our attorneys should handle any communication, Mr. Harmon. This is an informal conversation." He smiled without warmth. "An opportunity to resolve your personal situation expeditiously, separate from these broader allegations." He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. "Meridian Bank is prepared to offer you a generous settlement, new housing allowance, debt forgiveness, and a significant cash payment. In exchange, we ask only for your withdrawal from the Alliance and a standard confidentiality agreement." Sarah stared at the envelope, conscious of Tyler watching from the motel room window. The boy's persistent cough had worsened in recent weeks. The doctor had diagnosed environmental asthma, recommending immediate relocation from the mold-contaminated motel. The envelope in Harmon's hand represented exactly what her family needed most: immediate relief, a new start, a healthy environment for her children. "I'll need to review this with my attorney," she said, accepting the envelope without opening it. "Of course," Harmon straightened his tie. "But I should mention this offer is exclusive to you, given your leadership position. The terms are quite generous now, but will become less so once formal litigation begins." As he walked away, he added casually, "Think about what's best for your children, Miss Connors. Principle makes for cold comfort in difficult times." Inside the motel room, Sarah set the envelope on the dresser, its presence dominating the small space. "What's that?" Mia asked immediately. "A settlement offer from the bank," Sarah answered honestly. "They want me to drop the case. You're not going to, right?" Mia's eyes widened. "After everything we've found out?" Before Sarah could respond, Tyler erupted in another coughing fit. Painful, racking coughs that left him gasping. Sarah helped him use his inhaler, then held him until his breathing calmed. That night, after both children were asleep, Sarah removed the papers from the envelope. The terms were indeed generous, more than generous. A housing allowance sufficient for a decent apartment, complete debt forgiveness for the foreclosed mortgage, and a cash settlement that would cover Tyler's medical needs and provide financial stability for months. All she had to do was walk away, sign the confidentiality agreement, let the other families fight their own battles. Sarah sat staring at the papers until dawn, the weight of her decision crushing. The following day, Sarah called in sick to the hospital for the first time in years. She needed uninterrupted time to think, to weigh her family's immediate needs against the principles she was fighting for. She took Tyler to his pediatrician's appointment while Mia was at school, listening with growing alarm as the doctor explained that his asthma was worsening. "He needs a stable, clean living environment," Dr. Patel emphasized. "Prolonged exposure to mold and dampness is exacerbating his condition. Is there any possibility of relocating soon?" "We're exploring options," Sarah replied vaguely, acutely aware of the settlement papers sitting in her bag. Afterward, she took Tyler for ice cream, a small indulgence that seemed simultaneously frivolous and necessary. As he happily devoured his treat, oblivious to the weight of decisions hanging over them, Sarah's phone rang. It was Barbara from the hospital. "Sarah, I need you to come in. Not for a shift. We need to talk." The serious tone set alarm bells ringing. "Is something wrong? Just come in as soon as you can." Sarah arrived at Memorial Hospital an hour later, Tyler in tow with his dinosaur backpack full of activities. Barbara met them in the administrative wing, her normally warm expression replaced with professional concern. "Tyler, would you mind waiting with Ms. Johnson at the reception desk? She has some cool stickers." When Tyler was settled, Barbara led Sarah to a small conference room where the hospital's HR director and legal counsel waited. "Sarah, we've received a concerning communication," Barbara began carefully. "Meridian Bank has filed a complaint alleging you accessed confidential patient information improperly." "What?" Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "That's completely false." The legal counsel, a severe woman in her 60s, slid a document across the table. "They specifically reference your treatment of Elizabeth Harmon 6 weeks ago, followed by your involvement in legal action against her husband's company. They suggest you used your position to access patient records for personal agenda." Sarah's mind raced to the brief interaction with Mrs. Blank, Harmon. "I treated her for a minor laceration after a car accident. We had a normal nurse-patient conversation. I never accessed any records beyond what was necessary for care." "We believe you," Barbara interjected, "but we need to follow protocol for such allegations. You'll be placed on administrative leave during the investigation." "Paid leave?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. "Unpaid, unfortunately, until the matter is resolved." Barbara looked genuinely distressed. "I fought for paid, but it's policy for compliance investigations." The timing couldn't have been more devastating. Without her hospital income, even the cheap motel would become unaffordable within weeks. This was clearly the bank's retaliation for her refusal to immediately accept their settlement. "How long will the investigation take?" Sarah asked, struggling to maintain composure. 2 weeks minimum, the HR director replied. "Potentially longer, if the bank provides additional information requiring verification." Sarah left the meeting in a daze, collecting Tyler from the reception area where he'd accumulated several dinosaur stickers. Her mind calculated rapidly. Current savings, minus motel costs, minus food, minus Tyler's medications. The math was unforgiving. Instead of returning to the motel, Sarah drove to Raymond's print shop. She found him organizing documents for the Alliance's case. "They're playing hardball," he observed after she explained the situation. "Classic intimidation."